Hey everyone, today we're standing on a quiet road just after the music fades and the spotlight shuts off. You're not performing anymore. There's no audience left to clap, just you, your breath, and the sound of your thoughts catching up to you. And if you think you can control how others feel about you, then maybe that's exactly what you haven't let go of yet. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're tuning in from and what time it is over there. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some soft background noise. And let's begin today's journey together. There comes a moment when the noise dies and something inside you wakes up. The conversations stop. The group chat goes silent and your calendar becomes suspiciously empty. It feels strange, like walking out of a theater in the middle of the night, eyes adjusting to something more honest than stage lights. The Stoics understood this silence, not as an absence, but as an arrival. It's where the real journey begins. Not the curated one others admire, but the raw one only you will know. There is no applause out here, just your choices, your memories, and your reasons. You stop wondering who's watching. You start wondering who you are. The world often teaches you to measure yourself by mirrors, likes, views, approval. But those mirrors distort you. Solitude offers something better, a window. A chance to look inward to see yourself without commentary. Philosophers still debate whether solitude reveals who you are or simply strips away who you're not. Either way, when the crowd disappears, something ancient surfaces clarity. This isn't loneliness. This is your reset. You begin to walk not to escape the world, but to meet yourself without distractions. No one's texting, no one's watching, and no one is shaping your words before they leave your mouth. The air feels lighter, but your mind gets heavier, as if silence itself is handing you everything you've been avoiding. At first you fidget. You open apps with no reason. You check for notifications that aren't there. The habit of constant noise is hard to break, but slowly something quieter begins to emerge. Your own voice. Not the one you perform with, but the one that's been waiting underneath. It's faint, like hearing someone hum in another room, but it's yours. And the more you walk, the louder it gets. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But let's be honest, retreating into your soul sounds romantic until you realize your soul hasn't been cleaned in a while. It's cluttered with assumptions, fears, and half-baked dreams. Walking alone becomes your way of decluttering. You start to question why you say yes when you want to say no, why you keep friendships that drain you, why you chase applause from people who wouldn't notice if you disappeared. The answers aren't always pretty, but they're honest. You begin to let go not of people, but of illusions. You realize that validation is a craving, not a compass. And once you stop seeking it, something wild happens. You start respecting your own opinion more than anyone else's. This isn't rebellion, it's realignment. Philosophers still argue whether virtue is found or built. But when you walk alone, you don't wait for answers. You live your way into them. To rise alone is to rise without a round of applause. No one's filming your early mornings or cheering when you choose discipline over distraction. There are no trophies for refusing that tempting shortcut. Just silence and the slow, steady build of something unshakable inside you. Most people rise when it's easy, when they're noticed, when there's momentum. But Stoic strength grows in the dark. It's made in the quiet hours when you could give up but don't. It's not loud, it's not glamorous. It's the gym without mirrors, the journal no one reads, the progress no one posts. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." That's not self-deprecation, that's detachment. Rising alone requires the guts to look ridiculous now, to become unstoppable later. You will be misunderstood. You'll turn down parties. You'll walk away from gossip. You'll go to bed early while others scroll at 2 a.m. People will call it overthinking. You'll call it alignment. This strength doesn't show up with confetti. It arrives as calm, as self-trust, as the ability to carry your own weight without collapsing every time someone walks away. Quirky truth. You'll start to enjoy being underestimated. There's less pressure when no one expects much. And then one day you'll surprise them. But more importantly, you'll stop needing to. Philosophers still ponder where true resilience comes from, but you'll know. It comes from the days you rose alone, silent and on purpose. To win alone is to redefine what winning even means. It's not about applause, followers, or some plaque you hang on the wall. It's not about being seen, it's about being settled. And sometimes the biggest victory is walking away from a situation with your peace intact. You win alone when you choose virtue over ego, when you resist the urge to clap back to prove a point to win the argument. The world may never know the restraint it took, but you do, and that knowing becomes your crown. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In other words, if you can be content with who you are, not who others think you should be, you've already won. This kind of win doesn't trend. It doesn't make headlines, but it changes you, because every time you act out of principle instead of impulse, you build integrity. You build a self you can live with. In your daily life, it might look like staying sober when others are celebrating chaos, or choosing the harder path because it aligns with your values. You won't get a trophy for that, but you will get freedom, the kind that doesn't depend on recognition. Philosophers still debate the nature of success, but real success isn't measured by noise. It's measured by peace, and when your soul sleeps well, that's the win that can't be taken. Solitude to the Stoic is not a void to escape. It's a space to return to, a kind of sacred laboratory where clarity is distilled, values are sharpened, and illusions are quietly burned away. You don't need to vanish into the mountains to understand this. It might look like 10 quiet minutes in the morning before the world loads its expectations onto your back, or a walk without headphones, or closing your eyes before replying to that message just long enough to ask, is this response true or just convenient? Seneca didn't retreat because he hated the world. He stepped back to understand it and himself more clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote his meditations not to publish, but to purify. Solitude for them wasn't exile. It was elevation. When you stop needing the world to agree with your every move, you start moving with a lot more intention. You become harder to distract, harder to sway, and in a world built to fragment your focus, that's no small rebellion. Quirky fact, some of your most brilliant thoughts show up when you're doing nothing, like trimming your nails, stirring oatmeal, or staring at a ceiling fan. Coincidence? Philosophers would say, no. That's space doing its work. Stillness isn't passive, it's preparation. Solitude doesn't disconnect you from life. It roots you deeper in it. You begin to realize that the greatest kind of freedom isn't doing whatever you want. It's no longer needing anyone else to tell you what you are. That's self-sufficiency. And it's rarer than ambition, louder than applause, stronger than image. You're no longer tossed around by someone else's moods or waiting on someone to say you've got this before taking the next step. You've got yourself. Not in theory and structure, in breath, in choices made when no one's applauding. Epictetus said we should look for all help from within, not because people can't be good, but because everything external is unstable. Your job, your reputation, even your relationships. But what you build inside, no one can steal it. In practice, this might mean regulating your emotions without venting online, or holding yourself accountable before anyone calls you out. It's building a code, a set of values you stick to even when no one's watching, especially when no one's watching. You don't isolate. You just stop outsourcing your worth. You stop needing every connection to complete you. They become additions, not anchors. Quirky observation. Once you stop needing people to validate your growth, they somehow respect you more. That's the paradox of self-sufficiency. It's invisible but magnetic. Philosophers still debate whether independence is sustainable in a social species. But Stoicism says, build your center so solid nothing outside can shake it. That's real freedom. The kind that can't be taken, only cultivated. When no one shows up, discipline does. It's not exciting, it doesn't flirt, it doesn't flatter. But it's the one companion that never abandons you if you choose to keep it. To the Stoics, discipline wasn't punishment. It was protection. The daily armor you put on so that feelings don't sabotage what your principles are trying to build. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, reminded himself each morning to stop drifting, to return to what mattered. If he could do that with a collapsing empire on his desk, you can probably manage a quiet routine without needing 10 productivity apps and a coffee IV. Discipline is what you turn to when motivation ghosts you. It's brushing your teeth when no one will smell your breath. It's reading when scrolling would be easier. It's choosing stillness over stimulation. And yes, it's lonely. There's no crowd in your kitchen when you make the better meal. No standing ovation for choosing sleep over Netflix. No highlight reel for resisting that passive-aggressive text. But that's the point. The real work is invisible. Philosophers still argue whether greatness is about passion or persistence. But discipline, it doesn't wait for either. It just shows up. Quirky truth: the more automatic your good habits become, the less willpower you waste. That's how you win, by making virtue your default setting. You stop needing to feel like it. You just do it, because that's who you've decided to be. To walk alone is to loosen your grip on what you can't control. Not because you don't care, but because you finally realize that clinging to outcomes is the fastest way to lose yourself. The Stoics didn't numb themselves to life. They just refused to be enslaved by it. Epictetus said, "You are not disturbed by things, but by your opinion about them." Translation: it's not the storm. It's the story you tell about the storm. You start to detach. Not from love, but from needing it to look a certain way. Not from goals, but from obsessing over how quickly you reach them. You act with purpose, but without possession. This shift doesn't make you cold. It makes you clear. Suddenly, you can enjoy moments without needing to frame them for approval. You can care deeply without losing your center. You can love someone fully and still walk away if it means staying true to yourself. In daily life, this might look like declining to defend yourself when misunderstood. Not because you're weak, but because your peace is worth more than someone's opinion. Quirky observation: the more you let go, the more control you actually feel. It's like deleting a dozen apps and realizing your phone battery finally lasts a day. Philosophers still debate whether detachment leads to apathy. But the Stoic doesn't stop feeling, they just stop needing every feeling to dictate the next move. You stop clinging, you start choosing, and in that space you begin to master yourself. The most powerful victories are the ones no one sees. Not the awards, not the announcements, but the quiet decisions, the ones you make when nobody's watching and nobody would blame you for quitting. The Stoic doesn't live for performance, they live for principle. They don't need the world to cheer when they choose the harder path. They just choose it anyway. Seneca once wrote, "Sometimes even to live is an act of courage." Not because life is dramatic, but because living with virtue day after day in a world that pulls you toward ease is a radical act. You win alone when you walk away from revenge, even when it would feel so good. When you keep your promise to yourself after a brutal week. When you don't scream, don't prove, don't gloat, just breathe and keep moving. These choices won't trend. They won't make a splash, but they make you solid, and solid is stronger than shiny. Quirky fact: sometimes your biggest win is keeping your mouth shut during a heated moment and then going home to make tea like nothing happened. That's not weakness. That's self-mastery with a lemon slice. Philosophers still ponder what defines a noble life. But maybe it's this living so well in the shadows that the light can't ignore you even if you never chase it. You become a quiet force. Not because the world clapped, but because your soul did. To truly walk alone, you must walk in partnership with yourself, not as an enemy, but as an ally. Solitude without compassion becomes self-punishment. And the Stoics never asked you to hate yourself into growth. They asked you to return again and again with discipline, patience, and grace. Marcus Aurelius knew he'd fall short. He expected to feel anger, distraction, even pettiness. But still, he returned to the path not because he was perfect, but because he was committed. That's the difference. You don't have to walk flawlessly. You just have to keep walking. That means resting without shame, correcting without condemning, speaking to yourself like someone you actually want to keep around. Would you shame a friend who stumbled? Then don't trash yourself for being human. Quirky observation: we often say things to ourselves we wouldn't say to a stranger at a bus stop. Maybe the next time you catch that voice being cruel, ask, would I say this out loud at the DMV? If not, maybe don't say it in your head either. Philosophers still debate what makes a life good. But a life lived in alignment, where your thoughts, your choices, and your values shake hands daily, that's a life you can walk through alone and not feel lonely. So walk alone, but walk with honor. Rise alone, but rise with kindness. Win alone, but win with peace, because you are not here to punish yourself into strength. You are here to shape yourself quietly, purposefully, patiently, and that is enough. Slow down now. The noise can wait. You've walked through silence, through resistance, through every corner of yourself, and you're still standing. Not because the journey was easy, but because you didn't turn away from it. You stayed. You showed up. And more than anything, you listened. To walk alone, rise alone, and win alone isn't a punishment. It's a sacred calling. One that strips away the need to be seen, the pressure to impress, the exhausting chase to be enough in the eyes of the crowd. Because now, you know. You've felt what it means to belong fully to yourself. And it's not lonely. It's liberating. You've stopped outsourcing your identity. You've stopped renting your self-worth from other people's reactions. You've built something quieter, but deeper. A kind of peace that doesn't panic when left alone in a room. A kind of strength that doesn't collapse when applause goes silent. Let your solitude stay sacred. Let your victories remain silent if they must. Let your daily discipline, your invisible rituals continue without needing to post about them. This is your quiet revolution. You don't rise because someone told you to. You rise because your soul says it's time. You don't walk because the path is clear. You walk because it's yours. And when doubt knocks again, because it will, you'll meet it with the calm certainty of someone who's already walked through fire. No performance, no noise, just presence. So take one last breath here right now. Let it settle in your chest. Let it remind you that you don't need to prove anything. You are already walking the path of the Stoic. Softly now, you rise, you walk, you win. And you do it all in peace. End of script. Have a beautiful day.